Sunil, start with you. That product that they're using for the shrimp feeds, does it have both a probiotic and a prebiotic effect, or do you know the mode of action, or are you allowed to talk about that?
I can't say very much, but it's based on research around what's present in mangroves where the juvenile shrimp are. And so it's, in those ponds, they're basically, to some extent, recreating that system and producing the substance that's there in the mangroves that makes the animals in the wild quite robust. And so my guess is it has both effects.
Okay.
But you'd have to contact Ridley direct to find out more.
But it is a dried product?
They produce it in the ponds and they have to dry it out, and then it goes into the feed manufacturer as a dry powder.
Great. Dr. Wang, where do you see the research in largemouth bass diets going now? Are you going to look more at the porcine solubles, or?
So I think we started our research on largemouth bass nutrition and feed since 2014. At first, we determined the diet protein requirements, and then we established the diet formula that can successfully replace raw fish diet. And afterwards, we spent a lot of years to want to establish raw fish meal diet for this species. We test the poultry meal, soybean meal, cottonseed meal, various fish meal substitute. Also the fed meal. Yeah. At the moment, in my laboratory, we can reduce the fish meal level, as you say, to 8%. I think there may be some difference between China and the USA because we use the fish with maybe different genetic background with different growth performance. Yeah. At the moment, we still try to down the fish meal level, but yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yes.
One question for Sunil. Sunil, so just before you went on stage now, you mentioned that you believe the commercialization of Novak has been successful because it's part of a larger organization, whereas you think it would have been a lot more challenging if it would be part of a startup company. I'm just curious to understand, and maybe that's interesting for this group as well, why you believe that's the case, and also what are some of the key lessons learned in commercializing Novak?
Sure, thanks, Tom. I think, yeah, good question. So Ridley is a sort of a large organization, and most of its volume production is actually terrestrial animal feed. So we at Aquaculture were acquired by them, and we operated a bit like our own little SME, but with the protection of the mothership, as it were, but not obeying all the rules. So we licensed Novak, and it was a long haul to getting it to work out in ponds, reliably, and then to scaling it up, to producing it in a big way. That drying process was really hard, really costly to find it all out. And I think that if we'd been a startup and constantly raising more money because we didn't hit our targets, because we weren't hitting our targets, and having to get offtake agreements in order to get the investment in, we probably wouldn't have made it. But the feed company was desperate to do something different and innovative, and it's difficult for corporates to do innovation, but there was this desperation. Being a local feed company rather than multinational, they're much more hungry for that sort of thing. And so, yeah, I just think that we would have ended up in insolvency if we'd been a startup. Without our own feed mill, our own customers to test things with, we had that whole supply chain downstream of Novak already established. So all we had to do was make the product, make it work, find out what it cost us. And that in itself took a lot of time and money.
Great, thank you. Dr. Gatlin, we've seen over the last couple of days how many companies are now producing insect meals, and I know a lot of universities are getting into it, and Texas A&M is as well. Can you give us your view on the potential there and what all Texas A&M is doing?
Yeah, Texas A&M actually has a Center for the Environmental Sustainability of Agriculture through Insects. So it's actually an NSF, National Science Foundation funded program that's an industry university collaborative research program. So Texas A&M and Mississippi State and Indiana University, Purdue University are the three major universities that are coordinating research activities to help expand the use of insects for various purposes. One of the targeted purposes is for aquafeed inclusion. And so, for instance, in my lab, we're looking at ways of trying to, for instance, conserve marine lipids, marine proteins from processing waste by feeding those byproducts to insects and then recovering those nutrients, which we're finding to be very fruitful in the sense that insects are great converters of those nutrients, particularly the long-chain highly unsaturated fatty acids. But there's also some other avenues that are being pursued looking at, for instance, enhancing the lauric acid content of the insects. They're naturally high in lauric acid, but that is a antibacterial, antimicrobial component, and we're looking at its effects on fish. So that's just from the standpoint of what we're doing with aquatic species. But I think the insects as a wonderful bioconverter has potential, particularly in terms of aqua feeds as well as for pet foods, finding its niche as a component of aqua feeds.
Thanks, Dr. Gatlin, and thanks to our whole panel. We've consumed all our time, so if you have any additional questions, we're going to take a short break, and you can find us in the break. And be back here. Thank you.